Hey everyone, my name is Patrick Tankey, and this week's presentation is going to be covering POP3 and SMTPS. During this presentation today, we will cover POP3, the configuration of devcot, hardening recommendations using devcot on a Linux server, SMTPS, SMTPS configuration using IIS for Windows, hardening recommendations using IIS for Windows, SMTPS configuration using postfix for Linux, and hardening recommendations using postfix for Linux. First, we'll get started with POP3. So POP3 stands for Post Office Protocol version 3, and this protocol is used to provide access to the mail inbox that is stored in an email server. POP3 protocol can download and delete messages. Once the POP3 client has established a connection with the mail server, it can easily retrieve all the messages from the server. The user can access these messages locally even if they're offline. So many email programs, including Apple Mail, Gmail, and Outlook, take advantage of the POP3 protocol. And POP3 also makes use of two separate ports. Port 110 is the default TCP port enabled by POP3, but it does not support encrypted communications. This is where port 995 would be used. It is used for more secure applications and is on a SSL port, providing more encrypted security. Next, we'll be talking about Dovecot. So, Dovecot is a open source IMAP and POP3 mail server for Linux. And the first thing you're going to do is install it. To do that, you can use the command shown to the side, the sudo apt-get install dovecot core dovecot imapd dovecot-pop3d. So this installs the core devcot package along with POP3 support. And next we want to enable dovecot on system startup. So we are going to use the sudo systemctl enable dovecot, and this ensures that it automatically starts on boot. This is important for maintaining a continuous email service. So to start the service, you can use sudo systemctl start dovecot. This manually starts the service immediately, and this is necessary after installation and any configuration changes. Lastly, you can use systemctl status dovecot. This will display whether it is running and any potential errors that could be interfering with your service. Next, we're going to go over some hardening recommendations using Dovecot for your Linux server. So first, I would disable plain text authentication. This prevents passwords from being sent in a clear text, reducing the risk of credential theft. This also protects against man-in-the-middle attacks, where emails can be accessed on untrusted networks, and ensures only secure authentication methods are used. To do this, you're going to want to edit your Dovecot files and find where it says disable underscore plain text underscore auth and set this to yes instead of no. Next, use sudo systemctl restart dovecot to apply your changes. Doing this ensures all user credentials are encrypted before transmitting and significantly reduces the risk of data exposure. Next, I would ensure you keep devcot updated. This updates patch vulnerabilities, reducing exposure to exploits. This ensures compatibility with latest encryption standards, and this can help prevent vulnerabilities from known threats. So to do this, you can do sudo apt update and sudo apt upgrade devcot-core devcot-imapd dovecot-pop3d space -y. This updates your devcot server because running outdated versions of devcot can expose critical security flaws, and regular updates help mitigate known vulnerabilities within the mail server. Next, I would limit the login attempts. This can help protect against brute force attacks, where attackers repeatedly try different password combinations. So to do this, you are going to want to go into your devcot configuration files, and you're going to want to set a login max attempts, and then restart your system to apply these changes. Limiting these login attempts is key in strengthening server security. Next, we're going to talk about SMTPS. SMTPS stands for Simple Mail Text Protocol Secure. It is very similar to SMTP, although the uses vary a little bit. SMTPS is always encrypted, whereas SMTP is not always encrypted, as well as they utilize different ports. SMTP will utilize ports 25 or 587, whereas SMTPS will utilize port 465. SMTPS also has two different operating models. First, there is the implicit model. This is a TLS encryption, or in this model, a TLS encryption is established immediately when the connection is opened, and the entire SMTP session is encrypted from the very start. And then there's a explicit. This connection starts as a unencrypted SMTP session, and the client server negotiate encryption using a start TLS command to upgrade to a secure connection. SMTPS operates with a encryption mechanism, and this is by wrapping a standard SMTP protocol within a TLS layer. This approach is how HTTPS secures HTTP traffic. The encryption process commences as the TCP connection is established prior to any email data exchange, thereby securing the communication channel from the outset. For setting up SMTPS using ISS for a Windows server, I would first install IIS SMTP server onto your system. So open Server Manager, go to Add Roles and Features, and find the SMTP server. Click that and add it to your system. Next, configure your system to use TLS encryption. So you're going to open IIS 6.0 Manager, go to the Properties, Access tab, and click Authentication. Check Basic Authentication and enable enable TLS encryption in the outbound rules. This encrypts email communication to prevent man-in-the-middle attacks and ensures compliance with modern-day security standards. Lastly, configure your SMTPS to port 465. Open your IIS SMTP server properties, navigate to the Delivery tab, click Advanced, and change the TCP port to port 465. Ensure that TLS encryption is enabled under your outbound settings, and then restart your server, and it should be up and running. Some hardening recommendations using IIS for a Windows Server include first enabling SMTP authentication. This prevents unauthorized access by requiring valid credentials for any email relay. So to configure this, you want to open IIS 6.0 Manager, right-click SMTP Virtual Server, and go to the Properties. Navigate to the Access tab and click Authentication. Check Basic Authentication and configure the valid credentials. Next, you want to limit your SMTP connections. This reduces the risk of DDoS attacks and prevents a server overload caused by high volume email traffic. To do this, go to IIS 6.0 Manager, right-click SMTP Virtual Server, and go to Properties. Navigate to the General tab and set a limit under the connection control. You can also navigate to the Message tab and set a maximum message size and recipient limit. You can implement these under the Access tab in Connections Control. By limiting these connections, we prevent service disruptions caused by excessive or malicious email traffic while ensuring our server stays running. Next, enable logging to keep track and monitor for threats. This helps detect security threats like brute force attacks, spam abuse, and unauthorized access. Excuse me. To configure this, open IIS Manager 6.0, right-click SMTP Virtual Server and go to Properties. Navigate to the General tab and check Enable Logging. Lastly, I would just constantly check your server and SMTP server for updates, as keeping your system up to date for known vulnerabilities is the best way to avoid cyber attacks. Now we're going to talk about SMTPS configuration using postfix for a Linux server. First, you want to install postfix using the command shown below, sudo apt install postfix. Next, you want to configure postfix using sudo dpkg-reconfigure postfix. Configuring postfix correctly ensures secure email delivery and prevents open relay abuse. Now you want to configure your IP tables using the command shown below. This will allow your postfix to go through your Windows firewall, and by allowing access to this port, you're helping ensure all emails are sent securely, and allowing only necessary ports to have access to the internet reduces the surface area of attack. Lastly, restart postfix, so it'll apply any updated security configurations, and enable postfix at startup to ensure it automatically runs after the system reboots. Some hardening recommendations using postfix for a Linux server include enforcing TLS encryption. This will encrypt email traffic, preventing interception and ensuring secure transmission. This helps meet compliance requirements and prevent man-in-the-middle attacks. Next, I would install and configure fail-to-ban. This helps prevent brute force attacks on a mail server and bans IP addresses that repeatedly fail authentication. To do this, you would create a postfix jail configuration file, add a few rules like a max login attempt or max retry attempt, and then restart fail-to-ban to apply your changes. Lastly, I would disable the verify command. This command can be abused to obtain valid email addresses on the server, and attackers can use it for email reconnaissance. Disabling verify prevents a leakage of sensitive user information. And to do this, you can open your postfix configuration file and just edit the disable underscore verify underscore command line to say yes, and restart postfix to apply these changes using sudo systemctl restart postfix. This reduces the risk of targeting, phishing, and spam attacks because you disable the attacker from harvesting valid email addresses to send messages to your server. Here are a list of the sources that I used.